Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And as always, we'll start with some news items. And for me personally, the return of the hunt has been pretty fun. Actually, did just jump clone back into SSAMA for the blueprint copies for my PI and on exactly the day of the hunt. So that was pretty damn cool because over there I of course have a couple of extra ships that can do different stuff, and my flycatcher is basically a very good option for these combat sites. Basically no problem whatsoever, could even just sit still on the acceleration gate, take care of all the rats, move on to the drone. That was also, I mean, it's a tough one. That little drone is super fast, scrams, webs, everything, but yeah, big enough tank and enough damage with the missiles. So that's been going well. I'm about halfway through the points, a little bit over that actually, when it comes to the hunt event, and I've got like I think 14 keys left, so I'll pretty easily be able to rack up the 300 points. I like this one. It helps you to train your D-scan a little bit as well, finding the capsules, and overall it should still be decently accessible for alpha clones if they go the data side route, or otherwise well, it'll probably incentivize you to go into fleets in order to tackle the combat sites, because those can be pretty tough, I think, for frigates and for players without too good skill points. But overall I like the hunt, and it's a pretty cool event to try to get to 300 points with. After that, on the news front, we had the live stream from CCP. I would say not too much of a surprise there. They didn't go too deeply into possible other stuff than the changes that are coming, of course, for industry, which are pretty damn major. And of course, we are going to take a look at battleships for the extra products this week, because those are changing, or basically stepping up a tier in difficulty for industry, I would say, with needing some extra products. Not too much of it, but people seem to be expecting a pretty sharp increase in costs there. And one thing that I did get, I mean, it was a maybe from CCP, but definitely a meaningful maybe, I'm going to say. So there is a very likely changes that was sort of hinted at during the live stream for the Rorcal, Orca, and probably the Porpoise then as well, because these mining command ships, I think they were referred to there, could look at some more compression options for the moon goo, and potentially even for gas as well. So that is potentially the route that CCP will be taking for those ships. Next up, let's take a quick look at the New Eden store and see what's happening over here. So we got a sale happening, all right. Hazard control skin, rock breaker skins, all right, kind of cool, right, for the venture. If you want a skin for the venture here, 36 plex, that doesn't seem too outrageous. Noctis has the same option, and miasmos as well. And then we get a little bit more here, Oasis of Fate skins, and then the Helmet's Harrier skin, a couple of those as well. Even Metamataria for Triglavian ships, Ruby, alright, Kronos, Ruby, Sungrazer skin. That's actually a decent chunk off here, like 70% probably. And then down here, a Rattlesnake skin. Ooh, the Vital Shift Ego skin. That's actually a very good looking one here for the Bustard and the Basilisk. I like that. So a couple of skins on sale, pretty cool stuff. And now let's take a quick look at these services. Nothing too special. I do think we just come from a discount to our accounts from the CCP website not that long ago. That means that we get to move on to the website. Let's go to Plex and stuff, and that is starting at 415. Like that, and let's get in here with the Plex. So breaking through the 2.3 million barrier did not take too much effort, and now it's a 2.2 barrier that does seem to show the first sign of real resistance. You can clearly see those daily data points. A couple of them are below that, but the 5-day moving average is not willing to go below 2.2 million just yet. So let's take a look in JITA. 2.3 million, just below that for the sellers, just below 2.2 million for the buyers. They're still trying, but they're having a rougher time, I think, think of managing to pull the prices back down. And then when it comes to the player-owned trade hubs, well, sellers very much in the same range here, 2.29 pretty much. And then the buyers, do they go up? Yeah, super close to 2.2 million now. So this starts to feel like the market doesn't want to go much lower than 2.2 million for a single plex, which I think is a reasonable price for 30-day Omega. It's even quite doable to get to, what would that be? Is that 1.1 billion or something like that? Yeah, that feels like actually decently affordable plex at the moment, if of course you know what you're doing. For me, for instance, for exploration, right, if I would be say, all right, I'm gonna play every week and I'm actually gonna do some decently intense exploration, I can see myself getting 500 plex in a month pretty easily. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate. That's of course heading in the same direction, a couple of days below 1.15 billion, but that same hesitation building in here on the 5-day moving average, not really willing to just straight go through that next resistance level, although sellers are coming in now at 1.148, just below 1.15, and then buyers at 1.1, and what was it on the charts? Yeah, 1.15. Oh, we're actually going to go below this now. Next, but yeah, I think it was, well, 1.1 billion for 500 plex. So I think this could really become the resistance here. So oh, that's actually bad news. Expect us to still go down a little bit, and for buyers to probably eventually go below the 1.1 mark as well on all of that plex pressure. Next up here, we've got the skill extractors. This one is following the plex chart quite closely, but it doesn't have as pronounced a round number where the market tends to hesitate. We see that quite often here in plex, right? So here 2.3, so we're slowly heading there, and then the market either decides that this is resistance or no, it decides no, and then at 2.2 you get the same thing here, same thing at 2.4. Clearly here the market hesitated for a little bit at 2.5 here as well. You don't have that in skill extractors, which means that they are clearly correlated, obviously, if you look at this chart, but it's plex that's really giving the direction. That's basically steering this market, because well, when plex stops going down, then so do these skill extractors, even though we just broke through 260 million as a price point. 255 for the sellers, 247 for the buyers, so it could end up being 250, but that's still a ways below here. So that's that correlation, and it's interesting. We have been here once before though at 280 for the skill extractors, and same thing then for plex at around 2.4 million. We had this hesitation as well, but this feels a little bit longer already than this one, so maybe 2.2 million could become the bottom for plex here. After that, we have a look at the skill injectors, of course, large skill injectors, and can I move that up a little bit like that? Basically also starting to flatten out after breaking through 630 million. We are currently looking at 612 for the sellers, 590 for the buyers. I mean, I'm not exactly sure of these numbers, but I'm starting to feel like the margin is narrowing a little bit. That tends to be a sign that a bottom is trying to be formed here, and well, sellers still just above 600, buyers below 600, so that 600 million range does seem to potentially be what we're looking at here. After that, the small skill injectors that are following the same pattern but not willing to go back above 130. So that's pretty important. That pressure does exist on both sides. Do we want to go lower? Not really. But do we want to go higher then? Nope, not really either. Quite a bit of hesitation at the moment. 123 million for the sellers, 116.5 for the buyers. That's definitely a pretty narrow margin between these two. I would say, to me, this feels like the market is trying to find a bottom. Probably the announcement for all of the changes that were coming could be like, all right, they're also rebalancing the ISK creation through NOSEC ratting. That's going to go up a little bit, should potentially perhaps end our deflationary spiral. I am going to say though that one thing could spoil the fun here, right? If you want to start to invest and then have higher prices, what we've seen, of course, is bigger prices for battleships. Minerals still going up, you can see that from the ticker, and all of that could drain ISK from other markets, and then the Plex market could be one of the victims in that. So I'm still not sure that we necessarily are hitting the bottoms and are seeing the end of deflation on CCP's announcements just yet. I'd say be very careful if you want to start investing here. I definitely don't blame you, but make sure that you don't just buy everything that you can or want. I would say slowly buying is the message here. Then we have the daily alpha injectors that are making their way back up to 45 million. Very impressive counter move to the other injectors here. So again, daily alpha injectors, pretty popular. I think alpha clones are finding this to be a very nice goal to shoot for. 41 million for a couple of sellers, going up to 47.5 pretty quickly. So these are probably a couple of quick sales that need to be pushed through. We could say 47.5 million for the sellers, 41 million for the buyers. Definitely seeing some decently strong numbers here. Maybe a lack of supply here as well, but that just doesn't make that much sense. If you can supply alpha injectors, you'd rather do that than Plex at the moment, I think. So here, pretty nice little recovery, and to me a sign that alpha clones are actually very popular, and that 40-50 million range is a very nice goal for them to shoot for. I earn 50 million, grab an injector, improve my character a little bit, go back out there, and I know exactly what to do next to repeat the process. Seems to be like a loop that alpha clones are enjoying. After that, we've got the hypercores that are also showing that hesitation, right? This is clearly that deflation that we've seen since the beginning of the year. We broke through 0.25, so 250,000 ISK. We're at 244 for the sellers, 230 for the buyers, but clearly in the last 10 days or so, we're not just continuing our downward move. Next up, we have the minerals coming in at 12 minutes. Like that, and let's get started. You may already have seen some changes have definitely been happening here. Also on the ticker, a couple of a big move from Megasite, but let's start as always with titanium. Look at this volume spike and then a jump up to almost 7 ISK. It's actually, let's take a look at the JITA numbers, 666, the number of the beast for the sellers. Well, it's practically 6.7, right? Definitely some upwards pressure. Decent supplies though, a billion units here. So we do have decent supplies. This will probably not shoot up to above 7. 626 for the buyers, decent margin, but they do feel that pressure, right? They do feel forced up a little bit, and I believe the explanation that someone mentioned here, a bit of a rush into minerals so that they can still rush industry jobs on the old receipts, because somewhere in April, of course, everything is going to change, and for some ships it's going to become more complex and probably more expensive as well, although the needs for titanium will drop. Well, if you want to get ahead of the curve and you basically want some battleships right now, that means increased demand, and that is translated through these volumes right here. Very impressive to see how again a CCP announcement changes the market. Now during the live stream it was clearly mentioned that CCP is keeping an eye on this, and that they're viewing this as having many different levels levers now in order to like influence certain ships if they want to, which I agree is probably one of the goals, and they don't want to completely disrupt the economy. So they're saying just this is massive speculation, but this is not the end of the road, right? It's not that in April this is industry and that's it. We're not gonna touch that again for like a decade, or I don't know how long they haven't touched industry, but expect more to come after that. The CSM member that was on the live stream was pretty open about that, actually, that yeah, I mean, I knew about this a little bit beforehand so that, you know, we could give our feedback, but you know, I also know that this is not the end of the line, that there's a lot more coming, that CCP has pretty major plans when it comes to still the resource distribution, which will probably become like a dynamic system, wormholes probably getting some attention as well, and things like that. So overall, pretty damn speculative speculative what the players are doing, but also a natural response, of course. We'll see that at the end of Eve Talk with the battleships, for instance. But yeah, Tritanium up. So good news for miners, of course. You're getting a little bit more for your mining, which I think is good news for Dog God Game. I'm not sure if you guys know him, but that's a streamer on Twitch. I've actually been watching him for many years at this point, and don't tell him that, but he's actually a bit of an inspiration for me. I like how he's also able to do variety streaming, and he's pretty and chill, entertaining. I enjoy watching him just as a background for when I play games, yeah, he's been an inspiration for me that, you know what, you don't have to just focus on one game. You can do what you enjoy most, and yeah, he's actually an Eve player, an old school Eve player from in the old days. He's back to take a look at the game. I think he's gonna at least play for the whole month of April, and I've seen him mining with his friends and his corporation a little bit, which, well, that should be good news for them. They should be getting a little bit more out of that, because we'll move on to Pyrite next, and here is the next moonshot. 1 year high point towards 35 ISK. A couple of you guys actually mentioned that you have made some really nice trades and sales for your Pyrite and for the compressed ores that produce Pyrite. Could also change the most valuable types of ores to mine for in HiSec. Definitely the case, I think, and it's the same story, of course. Look at this volume increase here, just a bit of a rush to get industry done so that you can still get the current prices receipts going, of course. 36, 39 for the sellers, almost 30 ISK for the buyers. So yeah, Tritanium is a little bit better, but if you can focus on Pyrite, that is still very good news, of course. After that, we've got Mexalon, also probably getting close to an all-time high, I'm going to say. Look at the volumes here, so there's that big rush right now, and it's actually able to sustain itself a little bit longer, I think, because players know, well, somewhere this month it's gonna end, so I might as well just, you know, do my best, pump it up as long as I can. Keep churning out ships, you know, like battleships. Probably a lot of battleship production at the moment that is going to, you know, to probably keep things decently stable and in check as well, which is something that CCP actually mentioned. They do look at available stocks and things like that, but speculation is never far away in our sandbox. 171 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers of Mexalon. So although Tritanium managed to do some gains, you know, I would say it pales in comparison to Pyrite and Mexalon. If you're mining in HiSec, focus on those two. I don't think you'll regret it. For the mineral price index, this is gonna start to look a little bit crazy, because if I'm not mistaken, Isogen has also gone to a 1 year high point. Volumes wise, it's not that impressive, but it's definitely still an increase as well. And we finally broke through that 50 ISK barrier that for months and months now has basically been protected by a massive seller of like 2 billion units of Isogen. That one was gone as well. Then CCP did the announcement, and here we are, 70 ISK for the sellers, 68, almost 70 ISK for the buyers as well. Now we know that those stocks are out there, and so you do still have sell orders like this of like 200 million units. But if everyone is currently rushing to grab minerals and turn them into the more expensive ships, I would say battleships, capital ships, maybe even super capitals, that production may be up and running massively as well, because if I'm not mistaken, the expected price for a Titan is going to be completely nuts. So that could definitely be happening here, and so we have this breakout for Isogen as well. If you follow Eve Talk, you know that I expected this to eventually happen just on the loss of stocks. I did not expect the CCP intervention to do this, but now this is a very difficult choice. I would say, you know, if you're holding some of it for trading, I would definitely try to take some profits now, but perhaps keep a certain number of Isogen, because I would not be surprised if this are still old stocks that are currently finding their way into the market, and that eventually, you know, we're gonna stabilize. For Mexalon, for instance, I do expect a pullback when the demand leaves. For Pyrite, same thing, but for Isogen, you know, that may not be the case, and then still having a little bit left may actually be a good idea. After that, we've got the Noxium chart. I mean, it's gonna be the story here for the prices for April and February. I think the mineral price index is gonna be pretty interesting on the monthly numbers, but volumes pretty much double every single day in the last week or so, and we're talking almost 2,000 ISK for a single unit of Noxium. That has to be close to an all-time high as well. 1850 for the buyers. Just yeah, a big rush despite the already very high prices. A big rush on minerals to get some industry going, which yeah, you can expect once the changes hit that there will be plenty of supplies. So here you could expect a little bit more stability in things because of what's happening right now. We're basically you know, trying to make some savings, trying to get those reserves up and running. It's pretty impressive to see how responsive the player base is. After that, we've got the Zydrine market that's on a slower ascent, but probably because of its lower needs in industry in general, but it's still clearly there. Here is the volume increase, and then we are also reaching 2000 ISK. Above that, in fact, 2060 for the sellers, 1816 for the buyers. So buyers are willing to pay less for Zydrine than Noxium, a new inversion that is coming right here. And then the one that I've also, you know, I was wondering when is something going to happen for Megasite, but we have a volume bump that's already over that has caused a jump in prices to almost 880 ISK for Megasite, 710 for the buyers. Very expensive stuff. Finally, we also have the Morphite market that was not impacted here, although CCP did mention Morphite in the live stream. They didn't really say what they were going to do exactly, but they acknowledged, I would say, that at the moment the needs for Morphite in a lot of these smaller items does make it super in demand and super expensive, and so that they'll probably be looking into that. I think the response was, yeah, this is definitely like a good feedback that they need to look into. I think the CSM guy also said, I'm gonna push for this because I do see that as a little bit of a problem. So yeah, Morphite still 70,000 ISK. I remember in the good old days, even before the resource bonanza, I was trying to buy Morphite below 10,000 ISK as an investment, and now you have to pay 56,000 ISK in order to try and get a buy order going. So super expensive at the moment, basically because of the needs in the Tech 2 production is currently really outstripping supply by quite a lot. After that, we've got the PI market that's coming in at 22.5. Something like that. And let's see here, I'm actually a little bit worried. I'm going to you know, see if I'm right on that or not, but clearly now a big rush of ISK into minerals, and you know, we can expect a big rush into those ships that will become more expensive and harder to build, like battleships and up. So here I expect a little bit of pressure. Let's see what's happening. Broadcast nodes, no. Back up to 1.75 million, almost the average it started the year at, almost at 2 million, and so another step up here and in the recovery for broadcast nodes. 1.8 million for the sellers, almost 1.8 million for the first few buyers. Very impressive and not what I expected. Very cool. Next up, we have the construction blocks, also big jump here in volumes and a muted price response, but it is still up. 8,000 for the sellers, 8,000 for the buyers. Interesting. All right. Consumer electronics, same thing. Look at that volume increase here going back. I mean, it's still far away. I'd say 11, 12,000 is our normal average, but we're talking 9,000 ISK for the sellers, 7,700 for the buyers. Definitely a decent recovery. The reason is probably going to be because you will also need PI from a certain tier. So I think the changes were tier 1, you could say, for ship production is frigates up to cruisers, right? Definitely meant for newer players. Alpha players going to be very cheap, also making these ships basically throwaway ships, right? So that if you make a mistake, you could say, and lose a cruiser in low sec, it's not that big a deal because it will be very easy to replace. But after that, right, I think battle cruisers, battleships, definitely a tier that needs some extra stuff. And then you get capital ships and super capital ships, all of those will require new inputs. Also freighters, big transport ships. I think here the CSM has pushed very hard to keep them in line with current cost ranges, but those will also change, and so as a result, including that is a little bit of PI needs, perhaps even some needs for extra fuel because you will need more reactions. So overall there seems to be more demand, and a big jump here in volumes on the day of the announcement has pushed us back to, well, below average prices, but definitely a bit of recovery. Then here we get the coolants. Also look at that volume spike, the price response. Yeah, all right, we're back to above 7,000 disk for the sellers, 6,700 for the buyers. Not that big of a move, but we are away from the bottom. Cryoprotectant solutions, no word on implants, so these guys are actually not joining the recovery, but from my perspective, you know, this is specialized PI material, just like robotics. Robotics has crashed down from a normal average, I would say, of 100k down to 60k, while our cryoprotectant solutions, I mean, they're at the low end, but they're still at 100,000 disk a unit. And so at the moment here we're looking at the buyers, 89,000. All right, if I can buy these close to 90,000, I do think that I have a potentially good investment for an announcement on potentially some implants. And yeah, I mean, that is a gamble, I'll fully admit that, but that's completely off the radar at the moment. Everyone is looking at industry, ship production, minerals, the new needs, and so these are left behind. That could be your opportunity, of course, to jump in, because they may be suffering a little bit from deflation, right? Volumes here clearly down, less ISK available for that implant production cycle. Could be your opportunity to jump in on the cheap prices. Enriched uranium, so that's fuels that went up in price back above 7,500, 7.8 for the sellers, 7.3 for the buyers. They have to follow those buyers. And then this is a little bit of a surprise. I thought maybe advanced PI materials would stop. Look at that, full recovery. Integrity response drones reaching 2 million ISK on the chart. 2.1 for the sellers and almost 2 million for the buyers. Very, very impressive, I have to say. Mechanical parts, volume spike, slight price response. I think that's because of how easy it is to make, but we're above 7,000 for that. Then we've got our nanites, also a bit of a price response here, but pretty muted. So this could still be, no, 5.7 for the sellers, 5.4 almost for the buyers. I'd look to buy below 5,000 disk. Nano factories, you know, hesitation here, but we are at almost 900,000 disk. The volumes are clearly there as well. 950, almost a million for the sellers, and almost 900,000 disk for the buyers. Organic mortar applicators actually shot up back to its normal full recovery price of around a million ISK. That means we'll have a little bit of pressure here, but definitely also a very nice performance and a bit of a surprise to me. Almost a million for the sellers and 900,000 disk for the first buyer. Recursive computing module able to stay above a million quite comfortably as well. 1.3 for the sellers, almost 1.3 for the buyers. Yeah, there's some aggressive buying happening here as well. Then we've got robotics that is going back up to 70k almost. We are talking 66,000 for the sellers, 62 for the buyers. Self-harmonizing power cores, also practically in the range. I mean, normally 2 million should be possible, and we're talking almost 1.9 million for the sellers, above 1.8 for the first buyer as well. Sterile conduits, also back above a million ISK decently comfortably. 1.15 for the sellers, almost 1.1 for the buyers. Then tied to implants, Yukumi superconductors, actually a volume move as well. So yeah, I would say looking at this, protected solutions, that chart could still be our exception to look into. But Yukumi superconductors was below, let's see, what range is this? 65,000 disk pretty much, is now up to 86,000 for the sellers, 70,000 for the buyers. And finally the wetware mainframes, trying to get back to that 2 million, not exactly getting there, but almost 1.9 as well for the sellers, almost 1.8 for the buyers. So very nice recovery here in advanced PI materials, some of them very close to their normal averages, showing that there's strong demand here. So that's mineral strong demand, PI strong demand. That is very, very impressive. I'm going to say here, some savings are being used. And so, the inflation expectation for the longer term may be starting to play here as well, right? We've had a little bit of deflation, but at some point that is going to end. And then, of course, what do you want? Do you want to hold ISK or do you want to hold stuff? The answer is stuff. And that may be part of the reason why everyone is now rushing into getting stuff so that they can create more and be ready to create more later down the line. Advanced Moon Materials next, coming in at 29.30. But a quick drink so that I can keep going. Like that. And then is this one going to suffer? Well, I would say that the vibe has still been the Marauders. Having changed and becoming super powerful, have basically thrown the whole cycle for Tech2 production out of whack, and as a result, increased demand have still been dominating what's been happening here. Let's see if that's continuing. Crystalline carbonate for Galente, that is definitely continuing. We are reaching a one-year high point at 213 for the sellers, 197 for the buyers. Very speculative jump up here, I would say, not even that much in volumes, but a clear breakout to one-year high point. Next up, we've got the Caldari titanium carbide. Next breakout, that's a more sizable volume increase, one-year high point yet again, 344 for the sellers, 306 for the buyers. This is probably a comment that I saw on the Reddit thread about all of the industry changes, that Tech2 is definitely also struggling getting enough supply there, because one of the biggest things for that, the Marauders, it is a battleship, one of the only Tech2 battleships out there that's really demanding so much stuff that prices are going up across the board, for at least for now in the carbide section. Then we've got the Minmatar one. Let's see if we can fight that. Fernite carbide, double jump back up to another one-year high point at around 200, 205 for the sellers, 173 for the buyers. Volumes picking up here as well. And then for Amar tungsten carbide, also a trend for a month straight and going up to a one-year high point, 240 almost for the sellers, 217 for the buyers. Who would have thought that in the same week where minerals are clearly the most expensive they've been in years, maybe even a decade, PI, advanced PI, recovering practically to their normal averages, the carbide market is also hitting one-year high points across the board. I mean, ISK must be flowing like crazy at the moment. Then we've got the metamaterials. Those have actually not moved that much, despite what was happening clearly in the carbide market. So let's get started with those. Photonic metamaterials, well, it's moving back up a little bit here, currently going for 12,800 buyers, 12,740. Again, demand clearly, they're willing to pay the price very close to these sellers. So I would say that demand is quite strong here. The price just hasn't moved that much. Then we've got non-linear metamaterials for Caldari. Here we had that big jump up to 35,000 ISK, almost recovered from that, but we're staying pretty much above the chart, around 25 on the chart, 25,000 for the sellers, 23.5 for the buyers. Very expensive already. Then we've got the Minmatar version plasmonic metamaterials, also a move up. I mean, it's not a one-year high point here due to the war. We went up like crazy, but this is probably not due to the war. 26,000 for the sellers all of a sudden. Definitely some ISK to be made here as well, especially if, like at the end of last year, we would have bought at the one-year low points. I mean, those people will be jumping for joy. Terahertz metamaterials, also a move up to well above average. We are talking 26,000 for the sellers. That's a one-year high point yet again. So there are some moves to my surprise. The Galente one, photonic metamaterials, is clearly lagging behind a little bit. Then we have our other advanced moon materials, fermionic condensates here. I'm probably starting to read hesitation, just flat in between, right? Not a low point, but clearly still below average. Then we've got ferrogel that's starting to basically move in around the 35,000 ISK or just below that range. So this is also, you know, do we want to go up? No. Do we want to go down? No. The market is hesitating here a little bit. Fullerite's actually breaking out back above 1,000 ISK, so that's close to its normal average. 1,200 for the sellers, 1,000 for the buyers. Probable. It's likely that you need that in reactions, yeah, because players are expecting a far greater need for reactions across the board. Hypersynaptic fibers, clearly well below average, not the bottom just yet, but more hesitation here. Nanotransistors actually going up, so that's going to be more reaction stuff. So there are some that are winning out, but I mean, it's not a one-year high point like the carbides, for instance. So 5,760. Look at where we started the year at. It's a recovery, but it's not a breakout. Phenolic composites flat at 1750 at the moment, and then ceramic fibers had already, you know, a breakout and is currently basically able to maintain these gains at 530 for the sellers, almost 500 for the buyers. So another surprise. I mean, I'm expecting deflation or all of that ISK that flows into all of this stuff to at some point have an impact on other markets, but we're just not finding it. So I would say at some point, maybe next week, we'll take a look at salvage. I'm writing that down already because I mean, it's got to be somewhere. A market has to suffer from that, and potentially that could be where we have an opportunity, of course, to buy cheap stuff. After that, let's take a look at the Tech 2 ships. That's coming in at 35.30. Because, yeah, minerals up, PI up, advanced movements up. Let's take a look at the Tech 2 ships. I mean, these should, you know, move as well in the same direction as advanced movement. So let's take a look here. Basilisk, yeah, definitely up in the higher range at the moment. 231 million for one seller, but we're going up to almost 239 very quickly. 208 for the buyers. The buyers are, you know, being a little bit patient, although that is clearly around here on the chart. Oh no, actually around here on the chart. So a bit more aggressive buying here as well. Basilisk up in price. Then we've got the Cerberus. That's a tradable move here. Just about 2 weeks ago, we were well below 230. Probably could have bought those below 210 at that point. Currently 280 million for the sellers, and look at these buyers forced up to 256, something we haven't seen for probably a year. So this to me also starts to feel a little bit more significant. I would say the whole market around ships is starting to reassess itself and is deciding on taking certain positions depending on what it expects in the future. And it's no longer that Tech 2 is cheap, we're going to put ridiculously low buy orders, and so at around 200 million, and we're just going to stay here. This starts to feel different. So I would definitely say if you've been investing, I'm going to unload all of those that have profits at the moment, I'll be honest, except those that maybe I'll want to use later down the line. But if you've done it for speculation, I'm going to do that now, and then I'm going to keep a close eye on the market, but I'm going to start to take profits, I would say. Then the Guardian slowly continuing an upward trend as well, now above 200 million. And look at that, look at these volumes. There's clearly people that are saying, no, we want to hold stuff. I was saying I'm going to sell, but should I sell? If I look at this, Guardians at 216, buyers are at almost 200 million ISK at this point. That is a change right here. During this period before, look at where this line is, the low end, that's where the buyers were at. So 180 was for probably most of this year where the buyers were at for the Guardian, but now all of a sudden people are buying Guardians like crazy, probably to hold on to them, and as a result the buyers have been forced up to almost 200 million ISK, giving room to the sellers to go up to 217. I just said I'm gonna sell, now I'm hesitating. Should I already be selling, or do we expect volatility to continue in the Tech 2 market, but potentially to have a jump off point that's higher now, let's say 200 million for the Guardian? Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, guys. I'm not sure. Maybe I want liquid disk to put into other stuff, but maybe holding on to them could be the right move. Man, this is always so difficult. This is the market, guys. This is why I make Eve Talk. I'm just thinking on the fly now, but this is a second one, and on top of that, it's an Amar ship that has really been struggling with finding enough demand and finding any volatility. But now that upwards move in the buyers is here as well. Then we get our exception. Here is the Hound. That's going back down to less than 25 million ISK, 24 for the sellers, 22 for the buyers. I'm going to take a quick look at what that requires to see if we can make a link to industry. Not yet. Maybe this, no, I can't really understand why this one wouldn't feel that same pressure. So maybe we get a slight buy opportunity in the Hound if you do expect it to go across the board, or maybe here the market is saying, all right, maybe it's the same thing in Tech 2 as well. Frigates, destroyers could end up being in a separate category, but yeah, Cerberus is a cruiser, so it's difficult to say. Ikitursa for the Triglavian stuff, still 770 for the sellers, 700 million for the buyers, still very expensive. Slight downward pressure. I'm still holding on to my theory that Triglavians are finding more and more players that eventually find their route into positive standings for everything. We should see supplies slowly increase there. Next up, we get the Ishtar, definitely revalorization, except that it will depend on where those buyers are at. But sellers are climbing to almost 250, 248.4, so almost 250 million for the sellers. Buyers at 224. That is clearly another change from 200 million and below for the Ishtar before. Then we've got the Manticore, that's hesitating here as well, flat well below 30 million ISK, 27.5 for the sellers, 24 for the buyers. So another stealth bomber really not moving together with the market, because the Munin here clearly also volume increases and the prices are going above average. We're talking 225, 240 for most sellers, 207 now for the buyers. Buyers above 200 million. Again, we haven't seen that in a pretty long time. Nemesis, stealth bombers, they're just not moving in the same direction. 22.6 for the sellers, 20 million for the buyers. And then we get the Oneros, that has a little bit of downward pressure, but look at that regained volatility and those breakouts to 200, 230, 200. Yeah, at some point, of course, supply is going to find its way into something that was a very low volume product that has gained all of that volatility. I think that's what's happening here. 187 for the sellers, 168 for the buyers. It's basically a unique situation for the Oneros that's recovering. Then for cost here, oh my god, here's the Panther, 1 year high points, completely nuts, I would say. Almost 1.6 billion now for the sellers, 1.3 billion for the buyers. I'm happy that I added a couple of battleships to the Tech 2 section with all these changes. Here is the battleship pressure that is just pushing through everything at this point. Then we've got the Purifier stealth bomber, yeah, more hesitation, but at least we get some volatility. Look at that here, 38 million at a high point. We're currently recovering from that, down to 28 for the sellers, 24 for the buyers. Then we get the Scimitar that, you know, bottomed back out, but we're seeing this go up to 200 million. 204 for the sellers, 186 for the buyers. I think this is buyers up substantially as well. Then we get the Widow, that's probably confirming the battleship trend. Almost 2 billion here on a day. We're talking 1.8 billion for the sellers, 1.3 billion for the buyers. And then we get the Zealot, that's also finally starting to move up a little bit. Very interesting, 208 for the sellers, 180 for the buyers. So here in the Tech 2 ship markets, well, our stealth bombers are not moving, but everything else does seem to have been pushed up by a general increased price wave here, forcing the buyers up for the first time in months, I'm going to say. And that makes for a pretty unique situation where I have to admit I also don't really know what the best move is, but looking at what's happening here, I would say a lot of players are speculating that having ships now is the best thing that you can do. So that's why we're seeing those buyers up in those prices. That's my read on the Tech 2 ship market. Next up, the Tech 3 ship market, 4320. Let's see if we spot anything here. Was this mentioned in the live stream? Yes, on the cruiser front, it was basically said they've become useless. There's other options, better, cheaper options that do pretty much the same amount of work. So, and CCP kind of acknowledged that, but I didn't get the feel that that's on the radar for the too near future. So next up here, let's take a first look at the destroyers here that have been flat across the board. Well, all right, confessors, you know, the destroyers, this was actually also mentioned. I think it was a player that was very big in wormhole industry, although he didn't make them himself, that the destroyers, they were a hit, and I fully agree with that, right? They are useful enough, cheap enough, but well supplied enough that here you have this healthy market that's always been, I mean, for the last months, maybe even over a year, that's been my read of the tactical destroyer market. We've got a good, well-functioning market. And so here we have a big volume increase in the confessor, and there's a price jump up to 60 million. That is, in a logical way, probably going to reverberate throughout the entire market, unless, you know, there was a rush on these all of a sudden for the event. Could be for the event. But in the cruiser market, it's like, I don't know, crazy stuff, weird stuff, because of, I think, the place where both the ships are, but also the size of the market. So the confessor is up to 55 million for the sellers, 44.6 million for the buyers. Let me know in the comments if this is tied to the hunt or if this is more likely to be like a nullsec big purchase or something like that. Let's take a look at the Hecate. Then that one, yeah, slight volume increase, but easily absorbed by the market. 48 million for the sellers, 42 for the buyers. We still have 63 of them right here. No fresh supply. Well, obviously that's going to be absorbed by the confessor a little bit. So this, you want to say, all right, that means the Hecate's going up in price. This is still a reasonable amount of ships to go through, so I wouldn't be so sure just yet. It depends on what the others have been doing as well. Jackdaw clearly up in price on not that much of a volume increase, 55 million as well for the sellers, 47 million for the buyers. Supply wise, this is definitely a little bit better as well, but this is the second one that has spiked up. I'm gonna say due to the hunt. I mean, Jackdaw missile ship can probably do what the and even better than what my flycatcher can do. So these are two normal ships to go to, I think, for the hunt. And then finally we get the Zwepel that also has a volume increase, but was already under pressure a little bit apparently. It's at 46 million regular price, regular supply 41 million for the buyers. So interesting. We do have a confessor and Jackdaw, you know, price increase due to a rush on these two ships. I would say that the Hecate still has the volumes left to weather that storm pretty well. The Zwepel, it's just less popular, so I would say that it could move. It still has a little bit of room as well to move up to that 47-ish million range. It really all depends on how quickly this gap now is going to be filled by industry for confessor and the Jackdaw. If this remains, but yeah, it was like a one-day thing here, and for the Jackdaw, not even that much of a volume increase. So I would not be sure that this means a Hecate increase in price just yet. I think that there's enough out there to weather this jump here, to plug it very quickly and to keep rolling as we have been for the last month or so. Then we've got our cruisers that have seen a little bit more volatility all of a sudden. Here is the Legion on a volume spike. We're going back down to less than 180, 174 for the sellers, 167 for the buyers. Then we've got the Loki, pretty flat above 180. 181 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers. That actually feels like a reasonable range and between sellers and buyers here as well. Then we've got the Proteus shooting up all of a sudden. Zero explanation, but all right, 190 for the sellers, 172 for the buyers. And then finally we've got the Tengu that went down to 180 on average, actually went down to 170 last week and is back up to 190 now for the sellers. So for these cruisers, I still have to say I think that this, for instance, for the Proteus, we're not even seeing a volume increase that's that significant to cause a price jump to a one-year high point. I'm going to say manipulation. The market's small enough for that to happen, and I think that that is what is happening for the strategic cruiser markets. That means that we have our extra product left that's coming in at 48.30. Like that. And yeah, we're going to take a look at the faction battleships. So ships, battleships, and we want to start with the pirate factions. Here is the Barghest, which I think the last time that I checked it, I'm not sure when this was, probably over a month ago, but last time I checked this, it was like, all right, a lot of these are actually cheap. And I think that was when I was also, you know, looking into the mission stuff and looking into the golem that had just shot up in price due to the changes there. And as a result, I was like, yeah, maybe a Barghest is a good solution, or maybe even a Macarial that was very cheap. A Rattlesnake was decently cheap as well. But now, of course, with these industry changes, here is the Barghest that has all of a sudden gone up back to an above a billion price, 1.15 to almost 1.2 billion for a Barghest and above a billion for the buyers. So when I said, yeah, these look like good options, I should probably have bought a couple. Then we've got the Macarial, complete breakout, right? This was the cheap option. Well, no longer, going up to 850 million for the sellers, 715 for the buyers. And now this is, I really regret that I don't have at least a Macarial somewhere in a station that I would have the option, because it is an amazing ship actually. Then we've got the Nestor, okay, back up as well. Felt like, you know what, 600 million for a Nestor, doable, great option. It's got good drones, especially if you want in a fleet, remote reps, that spider tank that I see Marky Dragonfly from time to time. Well, it just went up by around a third. We are now talking, you know, more than that, 50%, 900 and above for a Nestor for the sellers, 751 for the buyers. After that, we've got the Nightmare, also breaking out to 1 year high point, costing around a 1.1 billion-ish for a Nightmare. And that was also an option that was like 750 million or so. Massive increase. Even the Balgorn, which has fallen out of favor a little bit because of its weapon system having been neutered quite heavily. Look at the volumes on this, and we're talking 700, almost 800 million is for the sellers. Then we've got the Rattlesnake that was actually in super affordable territory, well below average, down to less than 600 million ISK, and now it's going for 900 million ISK, another 50% increase in the price of the PvE king, I would say, for a lot of players. And then finally we've got the Vindicator that's already recovering a little bit, but also clearly went up on big volumes, over 900 million ISK for the sellers, 820 for the buyers. So the pirate faction ships, clearly big moves on the announcement, and yeah, they actually became a section on their own because they would require unique stuff to build as well. So let's take a look at the Navy faction ships. Here is the Thunderchild, slowly edging up, still probably a bit of an edge case because of how low usage it has, 750 million for the sellers and 600 for the buyers. Then we've got the Apocalypse Navy issue, up to 600 million, back up to its high range. And in fact, no, this is wrong. The sellers have gone up to 900 million ISK. So that's, yeah, pretty high on the chart right here. So that still has to mature basically. Armageddon Navy issue, here's the next moonshot. High point is 700 for the chart, 655, we're almost there. Availability is next to gone though. Dominic's Navy issue went above 600, so 750. So this again, you know, on these volumes, that's a lot of ISK, right? That's trading places. Let's see on next month's report if velocity of ISK has increased. Megatron Navy issue, look at that going up substantially as well, 640 for the sellers. Then we get the Raven Navy issue. All right, one exception, the battleship that I happen to have chosen to go in first with for the level 4 missions is at 740 million ISK. So I can't go back there and sell that one for a profit, looking for another option. Scorpion Navy issue, definitely flat because it's different, I think. Not as good a damage dealer. Tempest Fleet issue though, clearly up as well. And then the Typhoon Fleet issue is also up to almost 800 million ISK. That still has to show up on the chart as well if those sellers are actually able to stick that price. So that's already very expensive as well. Not as impressive a move as some of the pirate battleships, but we're just gonna add that in since this is the extra category anyways. We're also gonna take a look at these standard battleships because I think here those have basically you know, become a different section for Tech 1 production. Before it was just minerals, just like all Tech 1 ships, and now they will require some extra stuff. And so here they were already very expensive on the mineral price changes up to 250 million, but this really also means that for newer players, I would say the CCP's goal, and this was also mentioned by the CSM, is that frigates, destroyers, cruisers, that type of stuff. Let's see if I'm right on that. Battle cruisers, gonna just take a quick peek at that. Not that we're gonna do the whole section, but yeah, a couple of these clearly up in volumes there as well. So I would say frigate, destroyer, cruiser, that's going to be your free-to-play option. Your, you know, do whatever you want with these, make as many as you want, lose as many as you want. That's going to be hardly of consequence to your experience in EVE Online. But once you want to go higher than that, battle cruiser, battleship, that's definitely going to go up in price and up in commitment. And after that, of course, capital ships, super capital ships are going to become an even bigger hurdle to decide on. So the Armageddon, the Abaddon here, excuse me, up significantly, currently selling for 350 million ISK. Apocalypse selling for 400 million ISK, yeah, almost. And then the Armageddon jumping up. All of these one-year high points yet again on these big volumes. So this is another sign, yeah, I would say big wallet reserves have been expended here to get into stuff. That's gonna change with the patch for industry. Raven, one-year high point up above 300. Rock, almost 400 million ISK for a rock. It does look very cool. And then the Scorpion, even the Scorpion breaking out to 300 million. For Galente, Dominic's one-year high point at around 350. Hyperion costing 400. Megatron at 350 as well. And then we get the Maelstrom, full breakout, right? The Minmatar ones were like a little bit cheaper, a little bit less popular, going for less than 250. Now 340 million ISK. Then we get the Tempest going for 340, and then we get the Typhoon going for 350 million as well. So yeah, battleships going up in price. And if you want to do level 4 missions and you still need to buy your battleships, that is going to become a lot more expensive. I'm just gonna take a quick look at these. I just have to, this is gonna be a battleship segment. Here is the Paladin chart. Paladin buff up to 2 billion, industry changes 2.4 billion for the sellers, and some are trying at 3 billion ISK. Kaldari for the Golem. Also super expensive, but decently well weathered, I would say. 2 billion now for the Golem. Then we get the Kronos for Galente. That's another step up. Was only 1.75 billion. Now we are talking 2 billion almost for the Kronos. And then the Varger, also a step up, well above 2 billion. So at 2.2 billion, pretty much. Super expensive. Yeah, this is going to be the battleships. It's going to become a lot more expensive and a lot more of a commitment. At least the market seems to believe that, because everyone that can grab a battleship at the moment is clearly doing so. And that's going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.